Recording in progress. And now we hit go live. And we are live. Live stream on a Friday. What's up, Mateo? Hi.
Coming at you live. Good to see you, Danielle. Stoked and happy to be here talking with you today. I'm excited to share these keys.
What's up, Mateo? Hi.
Coming at you live. Good to see you, Danielle.
Hang on.
Stoked and happy
I did that last time too. One of these days I'm gonna learn to close the browser.
All feedback loops.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, welcome to another live recording of Lighthouse Live Podcast. This is really just an intentional time where I get some of my homies on live and we jam out on whatever's fresh for them. Many of you know so much of this illumination work, this lighthouse work is rooted in sharing tools and sharing our journey and sharing it with people who to me are like really living examples of embodiment and love and a new way of showing up in the world. And today we have somebody who is that in so many ways for me. Mateo is somebody, I mean, we have been buddies for a while now, over probably 6 years. Like I've seen him go from like, you know, just I don't know, like of course you were awesome when I first started going to your yoga classes, but now it's like, I've just seen Mateo add tool after tool after tool and be on his own healing journey while offering these tools. And so I got to spend a really cool week co-facilitating with Mateo last November in at the Medicine Connective Costa Rica retreat, where I really got to see how he shows up and how he is so rooted in what this body can do, like how this body can line up, angles. Like it was, I don't know. I just think what you're doing, Mateo, is like very next level. And I can't wait to have a conversation about it today. So with that, thank you. Welcome. Let's begin. You ready?
Yeah, so much since it's amazing thinking about it, because you're right. It has been like a 6-year-long journey and it just keeps going deeper. I'm amazed that the rabbit hole just, it doesn't end. And I think that's what I love so much about embodiment and movement and these spaces of transformation. It's a path to mastery that I know I can spend many lifetimes pursuing and still never reach an endpoint. Yeah. So yeah, excited to share everything that's, you know, I feel like every time we drop in, it's like, all right, what's the new downloads, the new keys? And I've got some really fun ones to dive into today.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely want, we want the keys. I know we want that. I kind of have one question to maybe start, you know, flying the plane as we start. So many of who is in this web, as you know, from the Light Leader Mastermind, when you came and guest taught, a lot of our friends in this web are offering tools, learning new tools. They are representing a new way through different types of medicines, modalities, whatever it may be. So my first question for you, and I see this a lot here, we're doing this work in the Midwest. When we take an individual that we're walking with and we go from not connected to the body at all, how often do you see that? How often have you seen that? How have you witnessed that in yourself? What's that journey to, you said it perfectly, dropping into the body and actually inhabiting the body? Because I see it again, time and time again. People come in, they have no idea what their breath is doing, or they have no idea the alignment of their spine or how their feet are striking the earth, right? What is that journey? If you could give us some language, and how often do you see it in people?
So there's a word, proprioception, right? And that's the technical term for what it is to experience our felt sense. And a lot of the journey of getting out of the mind and into the body is starting to wire the pathways to deeper connect to that proprioceptive sense. And I remember, like, when I first got the idea in my head that this was something you could be aware of constantly, that you could be in every moment turning back into the body. I was watching a podcast with Ido Portal, and he was talking about how when he walks around, he's constantly aware of where his head is positioned, how his posture was oriented. And it flipped a switch in my mind that it's not just something that turns on and off, but something that you can wire so deeply that it becomes a constant, right? And my girlfriend is crawling under the table right now to get past without getting a shot. You can walk past, baby. It's fine. So how do you make that journey happen? How do you get deeper into that? It starts with just feeling. So just connecting to your felt sense, just like taking a moment and like really recognizing, all right, what does it feel like to have a hand? Can I start to become aware of the tingling, like the vibration, the heat, maybe the warmth of it? And for me, it really started with a yoga practice. And specifically, I remember like my first few yoga practices dropping into that guided meditation of Shavasana and like feeling this vibrationatory felt layer of our experience deeper than I had for the first 20 years of my life. And with that came like a sense of such peace that I was like hooked. And I first did this with a yoga class in college, and my whole life I've had so much trouble sitting still. And I just so clearly remember the sensation of being done with that yoga class, going to my next class and being like, wow, I can sit for once and like not have this antsy energy. And I think a lot of like what gets so spiraled into emotional tension and stresses is just unexpressed internal, like physical need to move. And that was like the case for most of my life. I just wasn't aware of it. And then as I began to journey into the body, just simply through moving, right? Simply, you can get a little deeper through walking and just bringing your awareness into the process of whatever you're doing. Now, how do you bring the awareness into yourself? I think one of the most common anchors is the breath, right? And I think why is kind of an interesting thing. It's because the breath is the only bodily response that is unconsciously regulated and can be consciously regulated.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes it like such a reliable anchor point to start connecting to a more conscious awareness of yourself.
Yeah.
So, you know, breathing, moving, feeling is the path to begin, and it just continues to deepen. And what I've talked about before is when you start to connect to this proprioceptive sense, the experience it's almost like a call. It's trying to draw you to something. And when you're doing yoga, you feel that in terms of like a stretch. And everybody has felt this. You know, you're sitting at your desk for too long. You need to get up. You need to, you know, cats are doing this all day. Dogs are doing this. The animals are much more connected to their proprioceptive sense. We just do a much better job of ignoring it. And we can disassociate better because there's only so much awareness.
Right.
And a lot of our awareness is caught up in what makes us human, which is the story that we're telling ourselves in our head, this narrative structure that lays on top of our physical experiences. Like that's where all our CPU going. So the process of dropping deeper in the body has a lot to do with pulling the awareness out of that thinking story into this present, into this felt sense, and then connecting to what that felt sense is calling for.
Yeah, like recognizing the trap is kind of how I like to share and teach. And like, yeah, many of us, me, like especially, I was so trapped by my own awareness, being caught up in my humanness, and you know, whatever I was worried about, whatever I was not present with, and it was so it was so hard to not be identified with that for me. And same thing, kind of like you. And I would love if anybody that's watching live resonates with this, those of you that are like very committed to your embodiment practices, it was like there were those moments where I was laying in Shavasana, sweaty, heart pounding, and I had my mind didn't want to go anywhere but into my body and into sensation and into like what I was somatically experiencing. And I had never connected to myself that way. And like what you said with the breath, I wrote down control, like control. I could talk about control all day long, but like how it's the one thing we're doing automatically that we also have some level of control over. And that is such an empowering thing for us to learn as human beings that are so conditioned to getting our power taken away in different forms, subtly, not so subtly. Like when you can really control your breath and really have a grasp on what your breath is doing, look out, bro, like look out, like you're just going to feel different. And I know that's how it's been for me. So will you share with me about like the breath, like share with us, because we love the breath. We bond on the breath. What's really like geeking you out around the breath right now, or what are you enjoying? Because you lead a lot of breath work, you and your partner both do. What's going on?
We both breathe professionally.
Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so much I could say about the breath. I just want to emphasize like where this disconnect comes from, right? Where we get pulled out of ourselves has a lot to do with like the narrative, not just we're telling ourselves, but the culture is telling us. Like we're taught in Western society that the mind is something that's like up in the head and separate from the rest of our being. And I think we can easily underestimate how impactful that lens can be, as opposed to if we had been taught that the whole body is the mind, which is much more realistic to the reality of the situation. Like this idea that the mind is in our head and it's contained and it's all up here, that concept in and of itself is like pulling us up and out. So just simply like knowing that that is part of the situation and part of the reason that people are so disembodied, it's actually in the framework of how we view what is a body, what is a mind, and the fact that we do delineate them as two separate things. So like I just want to emphasize where that's coming from, because it's not something that's inherent, right? If you go to other societies and other cultures, you'll find differing degrees of this, but the Western sort of ethos definitely perpetuates this disembodied tendency. So knowing where it comes from, I think, is a helpful place to begin. And in terms of the breath, what I've been really interested in lately is not necessarily like a new breath work technique, because we've been doing this for years. Like I've breathed hundreds of different ways and they're all amazing and unique, but starting to play around with mixing the other tools in with the breath. So like playing around with toning has been very fascinating to me lately. And the way that I've been getting into beatboxing, just the way that we can use the breath to create different percussive and vibrational sensations through our being, and how that actually can like open and unlock different energetic parts of ourselves. That has been really fun to throw in with the breath. And then playing around with the body tensioning and control during different breathwork configurations or holds, like, and then tying a psychosomatic energy to it. So like maybe it's, as simple as saying like, all right, we're going to reach down to the floor. And as we're reaching down through the floor, we're going to inhale our way up to the sky. As we're inhaling up to the sky, imagine you're drawing an energy in. And I think that's like the biggest thing that's been fascinating to me lately, is just tying in imagination.
Yeah.
Right. Because like I come from a very like discerning scientific perspective originally. And it's been amazing to me what can unlock, like what magic becomes available to you when you allow yourself to mix a little imagination into it. So it's like it's like, okay, does it have to actually be happening? Is it actually happening? I don't need to figure that out. It doesn't need to be real, but I'm just going to give myself this permission to imagine that when I inhale, I'm drawing in light. And oh, wow, imagine that I'm feeling that cleaning myself. And wow, imagine that the density is getting released. And the more you give yourself permission to tie that imagination in with these practices, it's fascinating what begins to happen. You start to actually have the experience. So mixing in that key of giving myself permission to imagine, in addition to tying these tools together with my breath work, that's been like the layer that I'm now building on top. And then what I want to do is create experiences around that. So, you know, I'm making custom mixes so that when we're breathing, it's not just a playlist on Spotify, but it's an actual like combination. Because I found I like something that's unique about my breath work, for anybody who may be listening, is I like to do breath work to like EDM banger tracks, stuff that is like, you know, I don't know how many people were doing that before me. I don't know how many people are doing it now. But what I've come to find is through doing that, there is a flow to the buildup where it's kind of like, all right, intro, build up, big drop, chorus, bridge, big drop. And that's not necessarily the optimal energetic flow, because it's almost too much release on the drop. So I've been cutting out one of the drops to kind of extend the build up. So it goes build up, chorus, bridge, build up, and then the final drop at the end. And finding that by reconfiguring the formatting of the music that I'm tying the breath into, I can actually change the effect. And then playing around with warping the tempo, because my breath work is very tempo based. So we'll take the same song, we'll be breathing to it, but I'll start to slow it down. And as the song is slowing down, our breath is slowing down and our heart rate is slowing down. So you can actually manipulate the heart rate by starting to play around with the external stimulus that is being tied into the breathing. And then starting to synchronize visuals with it. So you have a visual component, so that when you're breathing fast, it's more like a red fast flash. And then when you start to slow it down, it cools and slows. So there's a externalized feedback to what your internal experience is going through while you're breathing. And I think that's kind of the new frontier for breath work, I believe, is taking these tools and bringing them into settings where they can be utilized to you know, more intentional degrees.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, the experience is only amplified when we're doing it together. You know, like that's that whole coherence thing. Our hearts start beating as one. You hold a shared vision. The Heart Math Institute did studies on this, where the vibrational resonance of the earth changes when 3 or more people gather with a shared intention, especially one that's rooted in love. And so, like, I feel like so many of us and so many people in this network too, in this community, everybody's like pushing the boundaries of what we've once known to be possible. And just like you, like, I came from a science background too. Like, I never really connected to the power of imagination or like actually visualizing the healing, seeing it clearly in my mind, and knowing we can train our minds to do that. Dispenza's proving it weekly, that the mind doesn't know the difference. Your mind doesn't know the difference whether or not, if you're just visualizing healing of your organ or if it's actually happening. So that's,
now I want to hop in for just a second there, because your mind might not know the difference and your body can be fooled, but I think it's important to also emphasize the edges, right? Because I do love this permission to imagine and the power that can come through certain ways of thinking. And also, like, if you want to get stronger, you got to lift some heavy weights.
right.
And this is like I think just a frequency that I am really brought here to hold when it comes to embodiment, is there is also this physical reality.
Yes.
And physical reality is also like the basis from which our energetic and spiritual and imaginative areas come from. And it's all feedback loops. It all ties and relates. But if you lift heavy weights and then you visualize yourself stronger, it will give you an improvement.
Mhm.
But also, if you only sit there and visualize yourself getting stronger,
Right.
it's like, do you ever actually change the body? So
Yeah.
there are these like these kind of edges where the body becomes like the limiting factor, which is one of the reasons that I emphasize like this physical container so highly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it becomes like a almost like a filter for what can come through.
Exactly. And we're living here in these bodies. Like we're experiencing life through these bodies. So I'm right there with you. I talk about this a lot, like lately being pregnant. Like
Yeah.
pregnancy, there's nothing more embodied than when there's a life growing inside your body. And it's like been one of the most historically like disconnecting times for women. And so I think there's so many opportunities to like, yes, what's happening outside of this physical realm is really freaking cool. And the real like work, I think for me, and the exciting thing is like bringing it down through this body, and then we see what's possible. Like, oh, I can actually have a really enjoyable and like empowering pregnancy. Cool. I never thought that was possible because I've been told all these other things. Like, what's going to be possible through these physical vessels is what I really want to know. And that's kind of my next question for you is like, what's waiting to be unlocked as we like really tap into what these bodies can do and what they're capable of? What do you think?
I mean, it goes so deep, and I'm just amazed that I have yet to find the edge of it. So yeah, some new key codes that I think are really interesting that I'd like to share is just this understanding of how different parts of our body relate to our psychosomatic understanding of ourselves. So like a few examples, I mean, like a simple one that everyone probably has heard of and has been aware of is like our right side has a masculine energy and our left side has a feminine energy. I'm
Mhm.
sure most of your listeners have at least heard of this concept before. Hey, baby, could you grab my charger from my laptop, please? Thank you. But why, right? No one ever really told me why that was for a long time. So I was always very like I need the science. I need the context to understand. Like it intuitively makes sense to me, but understanding that like, okay, our brain is split into two sides. Our right side of our brain is responsible for more of our creative, emotional, feminine sort of processings, and our left side of our brain is responsible for more of our analytical, logical, mathematical sorts of functionings. And the right side of your brain controls the left side of your body. So that connection has been proven, which makes sense that this part of your brain that is more on that feminine sine wave is connected to this side. So it's like, okay, that's why this side is more feminine. That's why this side has a more masculine energy. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? We can divide the body into various ways to start to understand more about like what each part of the body means. For example, right? Like your top and bottom half of your body, if we were to just like take a line and cut it at the bottom half of your body has certain characteristics that distinguish it from the top half. Like if you think of it functionally, it's the part of yourself that makes contact with the earth. So it has more concern with like stabilizing, rooting, and establishing like a condition of groundedness, where the top half of our body has more to do with like seeing, hearing, speaking, thinking, expressing, communicating, breathing. So when you look at that like psychosocially, the bottom half is more like oriented towards privacy, support, introspection, emotional stability, dependency, the motion that we make through the world. And then the top half is more about like socializing, outward expression, interpersonal communication, like your aspirations, your actions, your manipulations through the world. So even within like these different splits, we have our right and our left side, which is masculine and feminine. We have our top and our bottom, which is like one side is more concerned with something and the other side is more concerned with something. So you could start to like break apart. All right, let's say my right leg is feeling something. Maybe there's something going on with like the masculine relationship to groundedness and connection.
Mm-hmm.
or motion. Maybe I'm not moving, and it gets so much deeper to each
Yeah.
individual aspect. So like, I'm just going to go through some more. We have our front side of our body and our back side of our body. Our front side is like the part that we reflect socially. It's the part that we see of ourselves in the mirror. It's kind of our conscious version of ourselves. It's what we identify with. It's the side that we're intimate with. It's the side that's like, it's what we think of as us. Whereas like the backside of our body has more of a private, unconscious element to it. It's
Mm-hmm.
can commonly be like where we store the parts of ourselves that we're not looking at, right? It also, there's like a future and a past component to both of them. So it's like, all right, now we can get even more dialed in. Let's say it's the backside of my right leg. Maybe there's something going on with the unconscious, masculine, grounded nature in my body. And this just keeps on dialing in. So we have our head and our body, like we talked about, the fact that the head is like where we think the mind is, but it's also like where we put our mask on and we make this face that we present to the world. It's the part of ourselves that we don't cover. Normally we cover the rest of our body. It's the part of ourselves that communicates with the world. Usually everything from the neck and below is like more private, whereas like the head and above is more like emotional and shared. We have our torso and our limbs, like, and literally our torso is like more related to the core of our being, whereas our limbs are like more related to the energetics of how we extend ourselves and reach out into the world. So like just dialing more and more into like how the body in its different locations relates to different energetic representations of what's coming through with ourselves. So let's say, all right, the leg is part of my low body, which is connected with groundedness and motion, but it's also on my right side, which is connected with the masculine energy, but it's on the back side, which is connected with maybe the unconscious portions, but it's also a limb. So is it closer to my core? Is it further away? All right, it's all the way down on my ankle. It might have something to do with like where I'm overextending myself, and like really like our body becomes who we are. And these little issues and and that rabbit hole just keeps going deep. I could say so much more about that.
It's so cool. Like
a basic work.
Yeah. Like you said, we are a part, like our body is a reflection of everything. And that, I mean, that's a whole
we are a reflection of our body.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, really, that's a whole hell of a lot of responsibility to take. I was listening to a podcast on London Real. It was David Icke, and he was saying, really like what we're facing now is the level of self-respect a human being is willing to hold for themselves. And like, it's such a simple question, like, what is the level at which I'm willing to respect myself? And I know after walking with so many women on their journey in fitness and health and everything, like the answer was not a lot. The answer was not a lot. And what I love about your work, Mateo, so many of you all out there that are doing embodiment work, is that you are literally gifting the people that you walk with self-respect, like just like respecting yourself enough to ask hard questions, like where is this pain, where it's living, this thing. I mean, like, what a gift that we get to give ourselves. So thank you for your commitment. And I think you and I see this the same way too. The work is never done. Our work is never done. We're never done learning. We're never done embodying. Like there's so much to experience when it comes
Thank
to
God.
Yeah, exactly. Like
thank God.
Yeah, keeps us very humble. And like I've just seen you like transform who you are as a leader, as a facilitator. And we had so much fun facilitating together in Costa Rica. We'll backtrack, and then I want to hear how we can connect with you. What was one of your favorite moments from our retreat together in Costa Rica with all those beautiful people.
The first thing that comes up, the waterfall, the barefoot waterfall hike swim, that was, something I'm calling in more of in my life.
Yeah, it was just me, you, Jason, and one other person. We went swimming against the current.
That I think what's really fascinating to me is how I actually injured myself pretty bad before that retreat, and how just being out in nature like healed me, and just walking on the earth and climbing on the rocks and swimming in the water, it was such an interesting experience to be like, okay, I'm about to go lead this embodiment, and I'm like in pain from an MMA injury, and really that was like something I had to face. But through just being in nature, your body heals. And that was like such a powerful experience of that. I mean, I know that intellectually, but during that retreat, having my body come back to me through these experiences of going out into nature, whether it was the waterfall hike, I remember afterwards, like, so much better, it's like it's coming online, or going swimming in the sand, like the healing nature of nature was one element that I really took away from that experience.
So good.
Yeah, getting out in nature is the #1 embodiment hack. I tell everyone, you want to be more embodied, go spend more time in nature. It'll do all the work for you.
Yeah, you'll love this. Every morning we have been, as this baby, we're 2 months away from this baby, but every morning we go out in the dewy grass, my partner and I, and we walk our dog like for 15, 20 minutes, just barefoot. And like, I'm like, this is doing stuff. Like, I know this is doing stuff, like getting on the earth like this. So yes, everybody get your booties out in nature.
It's so interesting how, you have this intuitive sense of something like, all right, this is working, something's going on here, this is good. And then, we get a scientific model to explain it, like with grounding, for example. And then I look back in retrospect and I'm like, how did I ever not recognize it before? And then there's so many things like that where people will be like, oh, where's the science on this? And I'm like, can't you just feel it? Just do it and feel it and tell me how you feel. And it's almost like the need for this conception, it's a block. And it's the same thing that I think this key of giving yourself permission to imagine starts to unlock is your mind will almost block you from being able to feel something that might be intuitively beneficial. Whereas if you just say like, all right, I'm going to imagine that standing on the ground is good for me. Holy shit, I feel it now. I don't even need to understand the science. And okay, the science is there. Cool. That helps to reinforce it. But it's fascinating to me how people will block themselves from feeling what they're feeling because they don't have the intellectual model to understand it yet.
Yeah, so they don't believe it yet. That's that whole, like, Bruce Lipton's whole line of work, the biology of belief.
Yeah.
Right? Like your belief in something holds so much weight in how you experience it. So
in both directions, it can empower you, but it can also really disempower you.
Yeah.
And it's hard because I, to this day, value discernment. Like, it's one of my key ideals. I think discernment is, it's like one of the key words to my heart. But I found that discernment was what was blocking me from being able to experience certain, let's say, energetic phenomenon, because it would happen and I'd immediately go to, is it really happening? And then the more I would go into trying to figure out, is this really happening or am I making this up? The less I would be able to actually even feel it. So if I just, like said, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to give myself permission to imagine. That was almost like a key to open a door to start to allow what was actually being experienced to be fully felt.
Yeah.
So I invite everybody who might be, skeptical to anything that's coming up. Like, it doesn't matter if it's not true. See what happens. If you can just really give yourself permission to imagine. And what you might notice is you'll say that, and then the discerning part of your brain comes back online and goes, okay, but am I just fooling myself by giving myself permission to imagine? And it's like this loop, and you just got to go, okay, it doesn't matter if I'm fooling myself, continue to permission to imagine. And it just keeps coming on, and you keep giving permission, and slowly it unfolds. And all of a sudden I've found myself in places nothing short of pure magic through that process.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to, just share that key with your people.
I love it. We love you guys. We love you people. Let us know if you're on here live, or comment later. What did you take away? What are you taking away from this conversation? Hopefully you're ready to connect more to your body. Everybody that's listening, you are a leader in your 1 square inch of the world. You are here making an impact just by being you. And Mateo, I freaking love growing older with you. I don't even think we're growing older. I think we're we're aging backwards. I love seeing
better. We're getting better for sure.
Yeah, aging, I just can't wait to see where all of our work lies in the next decade. Your partner, everything you guys are doing in Austin. Share with us how we can connect with you, any ways this community can connect with you. We have your teaching in the Light Leader Mastermind library, so that is available. Mateo did an awesome teaching in that library, so that's available for everybody in the mastermind. But how can we get in with your magic, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, I got an Instagram. It's embody_flow, EMBODY_flow, FLOW. It's a cool place to just like find all the things I'm doing. But what I'm really passionate about right now is my YouTube channel. And the goal of that is really just to find engaging ways to share these keys with people, to turn the understandings into I feel like a lot of our work it's a distillation and a repackaging. Very little of anything that I share is stuff that I came up with. It's a combination of things from people much smarter than me, brought into myself, reconfigured, reshared, and repackaged. So that YouTube channel, it's got some really cool stuff going on, from guided audiovisual breathwork experiences to me just breaking down like perspectives that I've found incredibly life-changing. Like I just did a video on the 5 personality patterns. Have you heard about this, Danielle?
No.
Okay, I'm going to send you the video. You should check this out, because this changed my entire understanding of how I deal with getting triggered. It's fascinating work. Turns out there's 5 different ways that our energy or awareness can travel whenever we are triggered and don't feel safe. And when you can start to recognize which way is yours, you can start to work with it. And each of these patterns contributes to the way that our body forms. So you can almost look at someone's body and tell the way that their awareness reacts when they're trying to keep them safe. That's just the newest video. There's a lot more on there. So YouTube peak transformation, and you'll find it.
Cool. Do you still have some of your mixes on there, like your Joe Dispenza Gaia one?
That was my first video. Yeah.
Cool. Check those out too. I love those mixes that you made. All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much for being here, for sharing time. We are going to end with some love beams, so everybody can take a deep breath. So we'll just rub our hands together. We'll take a big breath in. And we'll just beat it out.
Charge that love.
There's.
I'm going to receive it. Let's take it in.
Yeah. You receive it. Thank you so much. Give your sweet, sweet love a hug for me. And we'll be seeing you soon, my friend.
Congrats on the baby.
Thank you. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
And yeah.